Today we're going to do our absolutely best to simplify the mystery of the post-spawn. Well, it seems like we wait all winter into early spring. You know, we've got the pre-spawn, those bass come up to spawn. We're like, yeah, the big ones are all super shallow. And then a few days later, they're gone. We know that, you know, there's going to be bass spawn over about a month or so, but that big wave comes up and we're all excited, and before you know it, all those big female bass are moving off and they're in a post-spawn mood and they're heading out towards their summer haunts and hangouts. And I'm not going to lie, the post-spawn can be a little bit tricky and frustrating because those fish once again are on the move. Well, today we're going to talk about several things that we can use just to simplify this situation and kind of change our mindset and thinking to help make this more of a successful time of year, because those fish are definitely on the move, and where they're at today, they may not be there tomorrow, let alone later in the day. So that's what we're going to break down. One of the most successful post-spawn tactics that I've run across is burning a square bill. If you want more information on that, I'm going to put a link to that video at the end, so make sure that you stay tuned for that one. Okay, the first thing that we want to do, especially if you're on a newer body of water or a lake that you're really not that familiar with, is locate what you feel are the traditional spawning areas. These are going to be in the backs of coves, backs of pockets, bays, great big flats. Those types of areas is where the bass have spawned. So that's where you want to locate. Boom, number one, where is that location? The second thing that you want to do is figure out where those summer hangouts, those deeper water hangouts, are they on a main lake point? Are they on a channel, creek channel ledge that goes through the middle of a cove or a bay? So once you have identified, okay, this is where they spawn, this is probably where they're going to hang out most of the summer, now we've got the zone in between that we know that they have to migrate through. Just very similar to like the pre-spawn, where they hit very specific types of structure or cover on structure. They're going to do the same thing as they move out in the post-spawn. Now, one big difference though that I've noticed over the years is when they first come off the beds and they head to deeper water. That deeper water may only be a foot or 18 inches deeper until they get on something that they feel comfortable with, and they could hang out there for a little while in a pretty good sized group. For example, if you've got a big old pad field and they are spawning up in and amongst the pads in open spots, and it's, you know, 12 inches or only a foot deep, and then as you're backing out, if there's a big old boulder or something sitting in 18 inches or 2 feet of water, that could be an absolute dynamite place. But they didn't transition that far in depth. So in our post-spawn, as we were looking for these staging areas on their way to summer hangouts, don't immediately go to what you think is deep water. Follow it out on the map or in your boat or walking along the shoreline. Where is something do you think that they will go to and hang out on after they are done with the spawn? Now, if you have a rocky reservoir, your more traditional highland types of reservoirs like your Table Rock lakes, they are often going to be hitting those secondary points. In other words, all the points between the main lake primary point and that spawning pocket, bay, or cove. So just keep checking those secondary points on the way back to the main lake. That's a very traditional post-spawn pattern and a place to look if your main form of structure and cover is rock. Now, if you live on a lake or a reservoir or pond or something where the majority of it is vegetation, they will move from clump to clump to clump of vegetation. They may be hanging in one weed bed, and then they may move on down to another weed bed, and the shoreline in these types of situations could just look like nothing. It could be hundreds of yards of the same thing. It doesn't have defined points or hard contours like you would in a highland type of a reservoir. So they will move from these patches of weeds from one to the other. Now, if you have a continuous weed bed that goes on forever, what you're going to look for there is irregularities within those weed beds. Are there some spots where there is a pocket? Are there some spots in the weed beds that form an underwater clump of weeds that looks like a point? So those are going to be the different types of staging areas as they move out to deeper water. And in any situation where you mainly have rock or you mainly have vegetation, if you have docks that come out and intersect with those secondary points or intersect with a good patch of vegetation, those are going to be dynamite places to hold fish as well. So make sure that you keep checking them as you move along. As we mentioned in a video earlier this week, also make sure that you check that transition zone between lighter colored water and darker colored water where the sunlight doesn't penetrate as deep, because they can move in the shadows right down that line as well and use that as a highway, especially if you're in a situation where there's no real defined structure or cover whatsoever, just looks really blah and bland. They will use that line where the light falls off, where the light starts to dissipate and hang in the shadows, and they will use that as a movement highway as well. So make sure that you check those. Now, as far as locating the fish during this time of movement, transition from shallow to deeper water, I'm going to be using stuff that is presented horizontally and can cover water. It's going to be your deep diving crankbaits, your square bills, your spinner baits. You can put your top waters in there, whether it's a walking bait or a buzz bait. I could even throw some frogs in there. Carolina rig is an excellent choice to use during this transition time, but I want to cover water because I know that every single secondary point in a rocky lake is not going to be holding the fish. I know that every little clump of vegetation is not necessarily going to hold fish, so I have to find the ones that do. So I want to move, and then when I get that bite, when I locate that first fish, I'm going to then slow down, hit it from multiple angles, and then I will probably pick up maybe some Texas rig soft plastics, a jig, a drop shot, Ned rig, Nico rig, wacky rig, whatever, something that I can more thoroughly cover that particular area, but I'm using my horizontal movers to cover water and to locate fish during this post-spawn movement. Well, I hope that this video really simplifies things for you as far as how to approach the post-spawn and understand that we're looking for a group of fish. So we're moving through dead water and trying to get to water that is more productive as quickly as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, burning a square bill is a great way to locate these post-spawners. And here's the link for that video. Go ahead and check that out. And don't forget to encourage someone today, because you never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.